Today, thanks to Crafted Elements, we're going to take this and make something epic like this charcuterie board. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dirdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get going. I've got here a nice piece of cherry which is going to enable me to make this in one piece, which is very good. I'm happy about that. I don't think I've made anything yet out of one solid piece of wood, so I'm glad that I wound up with some cherry wide enough to do that. And what we need to do now is get this sent through the planer. I've already done one side off camera, put it on the sled and got it nice and flat. It just had a little wobble to it, got that knocked out, and we are ready to go. Alright guys, I got this piece of cherry all planed out and I like how this looks. We are ready to get this traced on there and go over to the scroll saw and get it cut out. So all we're going to do is line it up on here nice. There's not anything in particular with the grain that stands out that makes me want to hug it one way or the other. Just get all of this marked on here. When we cut it on the scroll saw, we're not trying to cut it out to perfection. In fact, we want to leave a little bit. That's the whole reason for the template. And the reason we want to cut it away in the first place is like just to send the router bit through here will heat it up a lot and just cause the router bit to wear out a whole lot faster. So if I spend 10 minutes over at the scroll saw cutting this out, then I've saved myself a ton of money in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to take my Forstner bit and drill a hole through here, and we're going to cut that out first. Okay, I've got my hole drilled in here and I've got my bit, my blade all back in here, and I bought a 22-inch deep scroll saw here, but it's not wanting to make the swing that way, but that's okay. We're going to start on this side and swing it this way, and maybe by the time we get back around we'll get through it. If I would have realized that, I would have drilled the hole here at the bottom. I should have thought that over a little better. Alright, that worked out just great. There we have it. So I'm just going to keep going with this and cut the rest of this out, and we'll take a look when I get it all done. Alright, I've got it all cut out to its rough shape. We are ready to get this template stuck on here and get this thing in the router table. Now that we have this board all rough cut out from the scroll saw, I am going to go ahead and get this template attached to it. And I'm going to be using some double-sided tape for that. This is Gorilla Tape. It gets a really good grip. So we don't need tons of it, but we need enough to make sure that the template doesn't move on us. And these templates from Crafted Elements are really good about letting you pop them off when you stick them down like this. At first I was a little worried that I'd break the template, but it's pretty tough. I didn't just get crazy with it, but I wrenched on it pretty good the first one I ever popped off. Just going to get a couple more pieces down here and I believe we'll be good to go. go. I'm liking that. Now, all these templates come with a protective film, so we need to at least get it off on this one side, because we don't want to stick the tape to that protective film. So I'm just going to since that's the side I'm going to be using, I'm not even going to worry about pulling the film off of the other side at this point in time. Get all this backing off of this tape. Alright. Now we've cut close to our lines, but not to them. So we have a little bit of room here. So before we just drop this on there, we want to make sure we are really close to our lines. And at least knowing that we have enough material to remove everywhere. And we do. We don't have a lot right here, but we have enough. That's all that matters. I could have nudged it down a little bit, but it grabbed a hold. So that's it. Let's get this thing over to the router table. Now it's time for this template to do what we need it to do. We have good adjustment on the bearing, so we're ready to go. You never want to start on end grain, and you want to actually have your start pin in here. So I'm going to grab it real quick and get it in there. The start pin is going to give us something solid to butt the project up against. Once we get the bearing on this router bit against the template, we don't really need the starter pin. I can pull it out at that point in time. But when you're first getting in here, it might get bouncy, might get a little crazy. You just need some support, whether it be the template against the bearing or the entire workpiece against the start pin. We want to work from right to left, so we are ready to go. There we have it. I do have a little bit of burning in a couple of places, mostly right here and a little bit right here, going too slow. So I'm going to push some of this out of the way, because now we need to do in here. So I'm going to get this start pin out of the way for a minute, and we will be ready to go. There we have it. Let's get this template off. I'm going to use my multi-tool, and I am just going to slide it under here about where I know where the tape is and start prying the template off, hopefully without damaging any of the wood. There we go. Get my fingers under there. Work my way around this way. This is what I mean about these templates being pretty tough. And there we have it. All our tape stuck to the template, so we have to get that off. As you could see when I was cutting this on the router, some bigger pieces were coming off because I didn't trim it close enough to the line, and we got a little chip out right here, but that's okay because we're gonna put a round over on it so you'll never notice that. And somehow I got a little bump right here. I need to take care of that right now. If I would have noticed that before I pulled the template off, it would have been 2 seconds, but now I have to sand that out. So I just have some 220 on a piece of wood here, so I can get a nice flat edge. Just fix that bump. There we go. We got it all out. That was my bad. It wasn't tight against the template and I didn't notice it. So we are ready to get our roundovers. We're going to bust out our Rockler bench cookies. I am going to put a link down in the description for everything that we use today. So if you would like to get any of this for yourself, these bench cookies are going to support this workpiece up off the table for us and provide a nice non-slip surface. And then we will be able to go around this with our trim router now and get our roundover put on. And I think I'm going to start with a light roundover and then work from there. A little bit of tape stuck on there. And I've removed this tape before with mineral spirits and not had any issues with the finish in the end. I was worried about it though because they said that that could happen. So I'm just going to back this up a little bit and start with a light little roundover and see how that looks. So for the thickness of this board, it's not enough. We got to go a little heavier. So let's go ahead and drop this down that little bit. We'll use the full round over on it. Reposition things here. that. Let's take a look. I really like how that cleaned up right there. Yep, there's a little bit of burning. My round over is getting a little tired. I will be able to sand most of that right out. So I'm going to flip this over and do the exact same thing on the other side. Then we're ready to get this sanded. So with the same 220 grit, I just want to get these edges sanded first, and then I'll get out the orbital sander and get the rest of this on the faces of it. But I kind of want to work on these burn marks a little bit. The burns don't bother me so much. I think they add some character along the edges, and they just kind of turn out purple looking anyway after a good sand, or maybe more like they belong. They're definitely harder to get rid of in the end grain than they are in the side grain. Even on these corners, it's a little bit hard to get the burn marks gone. So I have been sanding here for a few minutes, but who wants to watch somebody sand? But as you can see, that little burn mark right there just sanded right away. It's these down here that get a little more stubborn. Now, if this was a thinner piece of wood, I think I would have went a lot lighter on the round over than what I did here. I actually really love what took place with this handle. And once I sand that a little bit, that'll almost be round, all rounded when I'm done. So I like that a lot. But I'm going to keep sanding here and get all these edges sanded first, and then we'll sand the top and the bottom, 2 different grits. I got just a little bit of tape residue still stuck on here, and I don't know if the sandpaper is going to eliminate it or not. If not, I may go over it with a little bit of acetone or mineral spirits and get that off of there. So alright, I'm going to keep sanding. I have some 120 on my random orbit sander here, and I'm just going to go ahead and go over all of this flat surface, and then we'll hit it with 220. I have a little bit of adhesive that won't clean off. I'm just going to go ahead and get it with a little bit of mineral spirits and get that cleaned off. I don't see any other spots. There was some right here. I might get this a little bit too, but it looks like it sanded away. But we'll see here. So I'm going to get that cleaned off, do the exact same thing to the other side, hit it with 220, and then we'll come back and do our final prep. With our first round of sanding complete, I've got most of the dust off of here. We need to water pop this, and then we need to give it our final sanding of 220. And we're just going to spray it down with water. I really like this part because it shows me what the board is going to look like when it's done. That is going to be a gorgeous cherry board when it's all done. So I'm going to soak this down real good, both sides, and then I'm going to stand it up on its end and let it dry. And this is going to raise the grain. So after we sand it, the grain raises, we sand it. When the end user sticks this in the sink, whatever, to clean it, the grain will not raise again. So it won't get all rough on them. It'll just stay nice and smooth throughout its life. And you don't have to, like, you know, drench it in water, but you want to make sure that you get enough on it to cover it and let it soak into the wood. And the end grain sucks it up really fast. So this is what it looks like fully wet, and pretty close to what it's going to look like when it's finished. As far as color is concerned, it will not have that sheen, and it will be a whole lot smoother. I don't know if the light can hit it right where you can see where the grain is already starting to stand up in it. So we'll let this dry. Tomorrow we're going to finish it. The board has been drying for about 24 hours now, and it is ready for its final sanding. And I'm sure you can hear that. It is nice and rough. It raised the grain up pretty good. So we're going to get it sanded down. Same thing, I'm just going to sand it with 220, edges in both faces, and then it will be ready for oil. I think I'm going to throw on a new piece of sandpaper. Alright, that feels incredible. Now with our 220, we're just going to go get all these edges again. As you're sanding it, just make sure you run your fingers over everything, because if it feels rough, it is rough. So I feel a couple little spots here. Just want to make sure you get them nice and smooth. Alright, I think we're in pretty good shape here. I'm going to get my mess cleaned up, get this thing all dusted off, and we'll be ready to get some oil on it. I've got it all cleaned off. Got me a little piece of plastic here because I don't want oil getting all over my nice flat woodworking table. And we're going to be using Howard cutting board oil to season this with. So let's get it on there. This has to be my favorite part. I enjoy the whole build, but I sure do like watching the wood come to life when you start oiling it and getting it just comes to life. Gives it that rich color that's hiding in there to begin with. Now I'm going to put 3 coats of this on, so maybe in like an hour or so I'm going to hit it again, and then I'll hit it again. Three coats in total is what I'm going to put on this, and then we'll come back and put the conditioner on. It is readily soaking this oil right up. So you don't have to get carried away, but man, look at that. That is looking good. I like these darker areas right here. They're little knots is what they are, but they're not indented in, so there's no reason to have to fill them or do anything with them. We'll get all the edges last. Hopefully the rag soaks up a little bit of oil here. Lets me get all the edges real good. I can't think of a better pastime than this right here. Get a little down here. Take that to this edge. The end grain, like anything, soaks this oil up like crazy. And if you remember the burn marks that I showed you in the beginning, I got a little spot left right there, just a little bit right there, a little bit right here, a little bit there, and the rest of it all pretty much sanded out. So we're in good shape as far as the burn marks are concerned. And I think, you know, it's my opinion, but I think that the burn marks actually add some character to the board. Nobody really needs to know that they're burn marks. It could just be a, you know, a darker spot in the wood, kind of like this right here, or those spots right there. No real difference. It just gives it more character, in my opinion, so long as the whole thing isn't burnt up, like your bit was just so dull that everything just burned up. All right. That looks like an awesome piece of cherry right there. I'm really happy with how this turned out, especially with this handle. I really like this handle. So I'm going to let this sit here for a little while, soak this oil in, and then I'm going to get 2 more coats on it, and then we'll come back when it's time for the conditioner. Alright guys, we now have 3 coats of the mineral oil on it, and now I'm going to go with 2 coats of the Butcher Block conditioner. This is also from Howard. I've given it a good shake. This has food grade mineral oil and some natural waxes in it. And those natural waxes are what's going to help give this some shine when it's all said and done. You give it a little buff off and get that shine. Let me rearrange the camera so you can see better. Now I do have this sitting on some painter's blocks just to keep it off this plastic. One, so the oil could have air, the board could have air underneath, and the oil could get into it. Now this applies a little bit differently, a little thicker, and I'm going to go ahead and put 2 coats of this on, and then it will get wiped to a nice, as you can see, we're getting a little bit of a sheen here. Some of that's because it's wet. It is not like a super glossy finish, so it just better prepares it for the life ahead. You know, water, all that good stuff. All right. That's about it. Nothing too crazy. Get a little extra down here. Some people I know just rub this on with their hand. I did it one time. Hard to get off. Washed my hands like 10 times and they still felt like they were full of oil. We want to make sure we get the edges good, get everything good. All Alright guys, I'm going to continue with the same process on the other side and make sure I get everything covered. And I'm going to do 2 coats with this and then let it sit for about 24 hours and it'll be ready to buff off and be put into use. Okay guys, that's all we got for this time. I think it turned out pretty doggone cool. Epic, if you would. And if you would like to build something epic, head over to craftedelements.com. Go through, look at their templates, look at everything they have to offer. They have an amazing selection that can make you look like an amazing woodworker. Pretty doggone easy. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider doing so. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos going to pop up right here below me. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.